Folks, welcome back to the Get Wired podcast. In these episodes, usually we're cutting wire, usually we're sorting through electronics, usually we're doing things that's related to my e-waste business, but not today. I want to answer a question, and we've got the whiteboard back out. I want to take you through, this question that came through, which I think is really relevant and super important, and I just want to be super mindful that, it's very easy to watch other people's channels and think that, because we've done it this way, it's going to work exactly the same for you. And I wanted to address that, and I really want to make it very, very clear on, just what to think about and to take into account. So we're going to be using the whiteboard today as well. But firstly, I'm just going to read out the question. I'll put it up on screen so you can have a look. I really, really appreciate the question, mate, as well. Hey, mate, when you made the transition from work from home and op shop sourcing to the storage units, how did you go about getting enough stock on hand to warrant the change? Was it through relationships built with op shop managers, friends, family, social media, etc.? Did or do you use any of the online vintage wholesalers based in Australia as well? I'm at this stage now where I'm wanting to take it to the next step, so it would be good to know. Apologies for the essay. Now, I just want to say, firstly, thanks for asking the question, and I really do appreciate it. It's, I thank you for coming here to ask the question. Obviously, there's certain things that I can say and cannot say, like I can't give you my suppliers and stuff, but what I will answer firstly, just before we get into the whiteboard, is number one is, I was like, that journey of me making that transition into a storage unit and then into a warehouse is on the premise and on the basis of knowing of where I wanted to build the business to, right? So knowing that I want to have staff, knowing that I want to be able to outsource things, knowing that I want to be able to have people come through and follow a process. That is my end goal, and to scale it quite large. So you've got to really make sure you understand what is your premise or purpose or reasoning of why you want to grow into a storage unit. Now, you said you are running out of space, and we've spoken since this as well. So there's a bit more context that I have. But with that in mind, you just got to really make sure, one, understand what it is that you're working towards and why, and how does that all play in together, right? So there's that, and we'll get into a whole bunch of questions shortly. But I guess what I want to first kind of address is, for me making that change, how did I source more? Well, I realized that, one, I couldn't get enough from op shops. I didn't necessarily have really good, behind the scenes or access to, to the back of the op shops. I didn't have those opportunities. There was a couple there where people would hold a few things for me or whatever, but nothing that was going to set me apart and help me scale to where I am now. And then other than that, then there was this mentality around us like, well, how do I start scaling without, having to work so much time in terms of sourcing? And, I was only really selling medium and books. Now, the reason why I got a storage unit actually was because I purchased someone else's storage unit, and I got about, I think it was over like 4,000 items of media, and that was a really good deal, but it forced me, I had to grow. I didn't have the space at home, but the reflection on that is like, it was all part of a plan to scale anyway, but it was forced. If you're working from home and you've got things everywhere and whatever, there's a couple of things you got to think about. It's like, well, if you are running out of space, how do you manage that better? And why do you want to grow, right? So if you've got a really good sell-through rate, you probably don't have a space issue. But if you're not selling as much as you would like, and you're growing the store, and you're not, necessarily gaining any space, it either tells me that you're not selling enough items, or you are actually in that period where it just takes a little bit of time for things to catch up. And I don't want to go tell you here, it's like, go get a storage unit and all your problems solved. No, because it costs you more money, right? And these are the things that I want to discuss about today. But there's a couple of questions that I wrote down that I kind of want to, and this is for everyone, right? This is not particular for this individual. This is for everyone. So if you are thinking about scaling, you've got to ask yourself these questions. What does it mean to take it to the next step? One, is it you are out of space, so you need more space? Is that why you're trying to grow? Is it that your growth and your ability to operate productively is too challenged with friction points, and you need more space to actually operate effectively and efficiently? Or is it you've built a solid business savings, like you've got enough money in the business to now invest that into scaling and you're ready to expand? Or is it that you want the business to grow and you think by doing more and adding more will help that happen? And these are some of the traps that we get ourselves into when growing. I know because I've got myself into a few little pickles a few times, but I've been able to adapt and adjust and go with that flow. And, we spoke about this last week around if you want to grow, it kind of costs you money. If you want to profit, it's very hard to grow quickly because you're using up all your profit. So you got to really weigh up what is it that you want. And it's a fine balancing act, right? If you can keep things lean and keep expenses low, well, then you can obviously, with the right product that is desirable, you can obviously get a quick turnaround and make some really good money. But if you're not having a quick sell-through rate and you're getting lots and lots of items, then you're going to have to start to expand like this. But I didn't expand like this on the basis because I have too much stock. I mean, we turn over our stock. Like last month, we turned over, I think it was 1,005 items. So like we turn over lots of stock. But, for what I'm building, I need the space and that to be able to do it. So you really got to think about it that way. But the things that I kind of wanted to touch on today was, to answer your question, just make sure, I'm just going through my notes, making sure I answer all your questions. So where did I get the stock from? Yeah, I continue to get from op shops. I have built some connections with people that now pick for me. I've got that. And most of it came from wholesale. I've used a number of different wholesalers in Australia. Some are really, 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 really good. Some of them not so good at all. I work with a supplier that isn't advertising, through Google or anything like that. That was through a connection. They reached out to me. That's been a really good blessing, and that was just by word of mouth. And then I've purchased international as well. And then I've got a few other people that I work with on a consignment basis, all that pick for me. So that's how I've been able to grow that, but that did not come overnight. And I've got my e-waste deal as well. So I've had to build that up, and a lot of that has taken like years on years of just reps and telling people what I do and sharing and connecting and, having the conversations. But I think the real thing that I really want to talk about today is like a bit of a, and I do apologize if you can hear the rain. I can hear it in my AirPods. There's this question, this idea around, do I go get a storage unit, or should I essentially just do a bit of a cost benefit analysis of, can I just change some things internally to actually make this better? Now, I spoke, and I'm going to do another video on this another time, but essentially I've spoken about a few times about how, like, if you've got a sell-through rate of 50% and that's all your profit and revenue in the last 90 days, well, that tells me that your other 50% of items, if you sell them, it's free money, right? Because you've already covered all your costs, you've already covered all your expenses, and that's bringing in your profit and revenue. So therefore, anything else that you sell is only going to top that up. But I wanted to do this comparison between paying for a unit, storage unit, versus, maybe you just need to sell more stock. So let's say, for the basis of this conversation, that the storage unit costs $450. Let's see if this makes sense. Yes, so let's say storage unit equals $450 per month, right? That's what you're going to take into account, right? So per year, it might work out a little bit cheaper per year because, we could say, let's just say it's $5,000 per year, right? I think that's maybe because you can get a discount or something like that, right? Let's just say that's what it is. Wow, this rain is getting really loud. All right, so based on that, you've got to think about it. Say, well, okay, if you go out and get a storage unit, all of a sudden now you've got to pay an extra $450 a month, right? And I have no idea of anyone's, metrics or anything, so you're going to have to tailor this for yourself. But let's say your average item cost is $10. So cost of good equals $10, right? That's your cost of good. And on that, your basis of an average sale price equals $40, right? I'm assuming maybe you're selling clothing, but I could be wrong. On the context of this, it sounds like clothing. Let's just say $40, right? So your eBay fees, 17%, and your postage is 15%, right? So fees is 17%, postage equals 15%. We're just going to do this on a basis of a sale of what it kind of looks like, which basically tells us that 32% of $40 is, what are we looking at? It's about $12.80, right? All of this. I think that's about right. Is essentially what you have to pay to just sell the item, right? In terms of fees and postage. The rain's really pushing in now. Okay, so $12.80, right? So if we say that's on the $40, then so net profit is $40 minus 10 minus $12.80. So your net profit is going to be about $17.20. Right? $17.20 is basically what you walk away. Let's just say that's right now. Okay? There we go. So that's what, let's just say that's what it is, right? Now, of course, there is going to be some level of overhead on top of this. Let's say it costs you just to actually operate per day. Let's say, I don't know, just to be awake is $100, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So at this moment, we're just looking at purely this, because right now, you probably don't really have any other overheads on a regular basis. This is kind of your fixed costs. Every time you sell, you've got to pay this. But you don't really have this at the moment because you're probably working from home, so you don't really have an overhead cost. You might have somewhat of expenses to, postage, supplies and all this, but for the matter of this conversation, we'll keep it to this, right? So this is where we need to start to think about. Rather than going and spending $450 a month and you still got to get more stock, if you've got excess stock, which isn't turning over, that isn't moving, can we flip the switch and said, rather than spending $450 a month to grow in a storage unit, why don't you spend $450 in your bottom line and get more revenue, right? Because that won't get you more revenue unless you do more work, right? So the way I look at this is like, what if you drop everything to be $30, right? And where are we going to put this? Put this was $12.80. I'll just put this over here so you can see what it was. There we go. We'll put it over this side. Move this over a little bit. So let's say we drop the ASP to now being $30. Cost of good equals $10 still. ASP is now $30, right? That's what you've moved it to. It's a bit, let's just fix that up a little bit. ASP equals $30. So you've dropped it $10, right? And then fees, postage equals, what did I put down? I did all this before just to make sure it made sense. It's going to be about $9.60, right? Which means your net profit after all this is going to be about $10.40. Right? That's what you're walking away with. So the difference between these two is essentially $6.80 is the difference of you're losing $6.80. But if you can sell, now I don't know how many you're listing, but essentially if you can sell 70 more items simply by dropping your price, your sale price by, what's that? It's like 20, 25% around there somewhere, right? Yeah, sure. It's going to cost you, if we go 7/7s, it's going to cost you about that $450, but you'll actually end up working out better because what happens is you're still going to profit. You're going to net an extra, you do this times this. Well, we're looking at like $740 or so, right? Might be a little bit less than that. So because of doing that, you're going to profit an extra $700. It's going to be a little bit more than that, right? And if you think about, if you minus the $450, right, you're still going to be higher off even if you had paid for it. So in my book, it's like before you go make the jump into a storage unit, you got to understand, well, why am I jumping into the storage unit? Like, what is the premise of that? Now, if this doesn't make sense, please reach out to me and I'll explain it a bit better. But essentially the way it is like, you're basically taking a hit of $6.80, right? And if that discount means you move an extra 70 items a month, you're basically going to net about $728 extra in profit. It's going to cover your $450 storage costs, and you still have $278 extra in your pocket. And you never had to tie up cash in the first place. So what I'm saying is, you don't actually have to go do this. The reason why you do this, right, is pure space to be productive would be the main reason. All right? Because when I did it, I think if I pull up the video, I can't remember, it's in one of my videos, I think I increased my productivity by 42 to 49%. So basically, I was almost halving the time it took me to do postage, to do picking, packing, all those different things. So I gained time. And when I evaluated it all, based on the time and the output that I was able to do with the time that I had, it paid for the $450 because I was able to get more done in that time. But if you're working full time, or if you're wanting to go into this full time and you're currently, it really comes down, like if your net profit, right, is like, if you're profiting like 4.5 thousand a month, right, that's 10%, right? I mean, I think it's a good thing if you can invest 10%, $450 a month, and it's going to give you, 50% productivity increase, which means probably within 90 days, you should be able to increase your listings, your photos, you'll increase your output and your ability to process and grow. So it probably will make sense. But if I was going back to now what I was, based on what I know, and if I had the knowledge of what I know now, because I didn't have systems, I didn't have processes, I didn't have any of these things when working from home. But if you can get the systems and processes working at home and be a bit more lean and apply this model for a bit, that's where you will win, right? That's where you'll probably make more money in the longer run. And then once you do this, maybe then when you're ready to, double down on listings or something, so you're going from 20 listings a day to 40 listings a day, you're going to need more stock. You're going to need more space to process that stock. And that's when this investment might make sense, right? The other thing you got to weigh up is like, and I can't really explain it on here, and I'll be doing another video on it. If 50% of your stock, right, equals, so if that's your sell-through rate, so right, and to get your true sell-through rate, it's not your, how much you've sold versus listings in 9 days. It's your sold, listed, over how much you have sold, right? So if you've sold, 100 and you've got, 1,000 listings, it's actually 1,100, right? That's your total quantity in that 90-day period, right? And then you want to compare like how many of you sold compare to that, right? That's the way you want to look at it, because that's your true sell-through rate. It's not on the basis of, okay, I've sold 500 items and I've got 1,000 listed. It doesn't mean 50%. It's actually you've sold 500 items out of the 1,500, right? Because you've listed 1,500. So make sure you do it on that. But if your 50% of your stock is making 100% of your revenue and your profit in that period of 90 days, that tells me that 50% of your items you could sell for less, even if you got $1 for them, right? It's actually just going to be a huge revenue increase and a profit increase. So that's the way I'm looking at all of this. That's the way, if I was doing this again, how I would probably approach it first, simply because jumping into a storage unit is great. It's really good. Like, it opens up a lot of opportunities, but you have to understand what is the premise for doing that. And if you don't understand why you're doing that, don't do it. Play with this first. Now, when I did it, I went ahead and I purchased, like 90 kilos of Levi's, and I figured out how to do that process. And then I started hiring someone to leverage that space and all those different things. Different goals. If that's your goal, maybe it's the way to do it. But please make sure you understand your metrics and your numbers. How much is it going to cost you to do it? You're going to have to move. There's shelving, there's expenses, all of this. You're better off trying to just like take less money for something, still profit, but you're getting money in your pocket at an expense. It's just like if you were doing, it's actually the same as if you were paying for advertisement. Now, I'm not saying to go do ads, but like if you spend $450 in ads a month and it returns you $4,500 in revenue, right? And you still profit, that's a better $450 we spent. So you've got to understand, how are you putting the return on investment on this? How are you putting it? Right, so that's basically what I wanted to chat about today. I really appreciate you folks hanging out here and being here. Bit different kind of conversation. I'm going to do more of these, but today this is what we got to. Haven't really done any work for myself, but I think this is a super important conversation because it comes up so often. If you want to, expand your business, just understand what it's costing you to do it. Because it's not as simple as like spend $450 and all of a sudden you're making more money. You have to then work harder to make sure the things are in place to get that return on investment. That is a quicker win. Definitely a lesson I learned the hard way, and I've been able to make it work. But I think when you understand where you're trying to get to, this conversation changes. Appreciate you being here. You guys have a wonderful day. We'll be back here again next week doing it again. I do hopefully have a sourcing video coming soon. I'm not sure when that is, but until then, we'll keep having the Get Wired podcast every week. If you've got questions or if there's a topic you want to talk about, let me know and we'll get into it. Ciao.